Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Stanisci, otherwise known as Candid Frank Stanisci. There's Gary Groob and our very special guest, the founder of Elev8 Lacrosse and former NLL Lacrosse player, Jeff Snyder. Jeff, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, guys. How are you?
Good. So tell us how you picked up a lacrosse stick.
Well, you're going way back. I started playing lacrosse. A guy by the name of Sandy Benny came to my fifth grade gym class at Captain John Palliser Elementary School in Calgary, and picked it up there and told my dad that I wanted to play, and he kept saying no because I was a hockey player and didn't want to spend. At that time, there wasn't a lot of field lacrosse going on in Canada, let alone Calgary, and I begged him to play, and finally he let me do it, even though he didn't want to spend another 4 months inside of an arena. That's how it all got started.
It's a physical game like hockey, but what about it attracted you? What facet of the game that attracted you to play?
Oh, I was, I wasn't a great puck handler. I wasn't a great skater. I think a big part of it was just I picked up a stick and I was good at it right away. I could control the ball. I could be athletic and just had a lot of confidence. And so I think that's what attracted me to the sport right away is it was something that I was good at and, something that I developed in and wanted to pursue it. I just enjoyed it more than baseball and soccer, and I kind of played everything growing up. I was a squash player as well, so just the control over the ball and being able to be an athlete, I think, was something that just really sparked it for me.
I don't know if it's the need or the attraction to the game, but it seems everybody who plays the game of lacrosse finds an avenue to expand their experience in lacrosse. And in your case, it's Elev8 Lacrosse. What was the reason and the motivation to start that?
Oh man, I was at the time I graduated from Denver. I was working. Started working in tech, and then transitioned over to real estate when I was in Colorado. I was playing with Philadelphia and the Denver Outlaws at the time. My OPT had expired. I had to make a decision on whether or not I wanted to stay in the U.S. and continue to work, or if I wanted to come back to Canada. So I elected to come back to Canada. Started working in real estate here. I ended up kind of floundering around, and I started in a company here that was doing some high-rise development. And the mentor that I'd been working under left the company, and so I sort of floundered for a little while. And I ended up signing a really good deal with Philadelphia to move into market. And that summer that was 2007. We ran our first lacrosse camp here in Calgary. And then that was sort of the formation of what the program was. Went really well. The following year, we did another camp. And then we proceeded to try and get a program starting at the Edge School here in Calgary. And knew we were doing something well when we got a cease and desist from Stu Brown because we were calling it Edge Lacrosse at the time, and they had their program going on in Toronto, and the program didn't get off the ground. It failed at the Edge School, but we ended up starting our own club program in the fall, and since then it's expanded to one of the only fully vertically integrated lacrosse programs in the world, in terms of the time that you touch a lacrosse stick to the time that you go and play pro and be involved in the NCAA, et cetera. And on top of that, we started developing our own gear brand in Northland Lacrosse outside of that as well.
I get the fact that it's vertical integration, and that means that you don't leave anything on the table. But how pretty is the table? What is it about the table that makes people want to do that vertical integration, take part in your group that you find is your strength? If you only had a time to spend a minute to explain why your program's important, I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, I think we take a lot of the lessons that we've learned inside of competing and playing, being coaching. We try to expand on all the positive stuff we received and remove all the negative stuff. But I think at the core, it's our core principles. We talk a lot about character, culture, and compete level. And I think when we started this program, there was a little bit of a hole. Lacrosse was sort of like a, and it still is very much a tertiary sport. Especially in Calgary, there's between 7,000 and 8,000 players playing the sport in Alberta, not even in Calgary. And so it's a small community. And I think for us, it was always something for me that, in the NLL, it's like, we want to be treated like pro players. We got to act like pro players. And that sort of funneled its way down into what we were doing from a professional component, not only on the field, but off the field. Every decision that we make, every direction that we take is really embodied in those three core principles. And that's something that people are gravitating to, especially now into the sport. It's becoming more mainstream, and it's getting a lot of more notoriety. And we just want to be a part of the solution of playing more lacrosse rather than the problem of trying it and not participating any further.
Well, here's the man that's going to talk to you about your history. I'm sure he's going to drill real deep.
Well, it's funny. Before we get into that, one more thing about Elev8 is you do something that a lot of the other programs don't do, and that is you are into the grassroots. And when we talked with Mark Millen a while back, that was one of his biggest complaints. We spent a lot of time and money on club programs and above, on guys who are going to try and make it to the pros and try and make it to the Canadian teams or U.S. teams. But the ones who aren't going to be pros, who just love the game, we don't spend a lot of time and a lot of effort with. And your program does, and spends a lot of implementation of grassroots.
Yeah, we do. So back in 2015, Andrew McBride and I were playing with the Roughnecks, and he was running a program called Classroom Lacrosse. And we ended up taking that on from Andrew as we were, transitioning out of playing in the league, and built that up pretty significantly to the tune of, we'll be in 100 plus schools this year. And last year we saw 35,000 kids in the Calgary community. We'll likely see over 40,000 this year, with respect to the program that we run during the day. In the classroom program, we've really figured out a model that works really well. We've since expanded. Tyler Pace and his PCL program has taken that on as a franchise model to deliver that, and that's our goal. Is Alberta is small enough where there's not a lot of room for a lot of competition in terms of club programs. There's a couple here. But our goal is, we're no longer fighting for market share. We're genuinely trying to be leading the charge in terms of growing that market collectively with respect to the kids participating. So we've partnered with associations here in the city to go implement the program at no cost to schools. We worked very heavily with the Calgary Board of Education. We were the first outside group that they let back into schools after COVID, just based on our practices and the way that we implement our programming within their institutions here in the city. And it's been fantastic in terms of introducing a sport. And you don't necessarily catch somebody the first time. You see a kid in grade 1, and you see a kid in grade 2 at the same school, and then maybe you're back there a couple of years later, and then you're switching them over because we've gone and instilled some confidence in them, the same way that I learned how to play and I picked up the sport. Is we're trying to make the kids have fun and recognize that it's something that they like to do and want to pursue. So we're really heavy in the grassroots side. That transitions into programs that we run that are introductory and low cost for them to learn more, skills and develop. And then a program that we're partnered and we manage all of their direction and growth is the Calgary Field Lacrosse program, which is a community-based field lacrosse program that has a house league and has philanthropic components to our game nights. We raise significant amounts of money every year in competitive settings for kids sport, and the Calgary Food Bank and programs like Toonies for Tummies and stuff like that as well. So it's a big part of what we do that's just underneath of more of that elite level development and NCAA guidance for kids as well.
Right. And you work right up into NCAA guidance as well, just like all the others.
Yeah, you bet. We just crested 25 million in academic, athletic, and financial aid for student athletes out of Alberta, which is a massive number when you consider the population that resides here. And I saw the report from John Donville the other day coming out. 6 of the 9 kids that are playing Division I lacrosse in the NCAA right now are out of our program. We've sent over 160 kids to the NCAA Division I, 2, and 3, male and female, out of Calgary in the last 15 years.
That's incredible. That's some great numbers.
Yeah, we're really proud of it. It's, sure, we run a business, but, we're lucky enough to work in lacrosse and lucky enough to have families investing in what we're doing. And the ROI is pretty significant. We're not focused on Division I. We just want to focus on kids going and getting an education and experiencing, the NCAA experience for themselves and what that means to be a part of it. And then, now with the Calgary Field Lacrosse program, we have so many kids coming back in the summer. They work for us, they coach, they understand our program, they understand what we're all about. So it's been pretty seamless in terms of the message that we're trying to provide and implement. And it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun to make an impact, and that doesn't happen without my brother. I'm here talking to you guys, but my brother Bob is the one who's in the trenches on the ground all the time, leading the charge, and he's done an incredible job with respect to growing the sport here and making sure the kids are passionate about it.
Right, that's how you grow the game. It's one thing with the NLL and TV and stuff like that, but to get grassroots and get the kids interested, then you get everybody interested. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's great. Like, we're the first touch for them. The Elev8 Lacrosse name is their first kind of experience in lacrosse, which is great. That comes with a lot of pressure in terms of making sure that we are executing appropriately and representing the sport appropriately. But at the end of the day, it benefits everybody that's involved in the sport here in the city, and that's become a big focus of ours now. Is less about the 1 or 2 registrations in a camp here or there, more about growing the volume of kids that are passionate and interested in the sport collectively.
Right.
And helping with entering the educational systems that really cement a future for someone.
Yeah, the amount of kids that have come through, like we have a hard time cutting kids that have interest in our program. Our selection process is more about athleticism and heart. I'd like to I'd argue that that's the way I played the game, and so the lacrosse skills are easy for us to teach. It's are you willing to survive the scrutiny of what our elite program is? And it goes down to, we have 6th graders writing us emails to be excused from practice for various reasons and a number of different things, families and kids and stuff like that. And sometimes it's a yes and sometimes it's a no. And we're teaching the commitment to the sport and the commitment to your teams at an early level. And we have a number of different obstacles that we put in their way. We sell the program as it's controlled adversity. It's in a safe environment, but we're trying to make it hard. And I think that's why we've had so much success. 12 of our 13 kids right now, we still got one kid left. And if he's going to put the work in to get to school, then there's no doubt that I think he can play there. It's just a matter of, are they willing to adhere to the process and commit to what that looks like. So 12 of our kids. And then I think the biggest testament to the program was in 2020, we didn't travel. We didn't play a single game in front of an NCAA coach, and we had 20 seniors that year, and all 20 found a home in the NCAA, which is spectacular. So it's really about the pedigree of player that we're producing, and less about the talent level.
Yeah, I guess the question is there a reward if there is no challenge?
That's very true. So we say that a lot, is that anything that you have in your life that's worth having has been hard to get and hard to keep. And so we try to implement that stuff as much as we can. And we're not for everybody. We're, a few years back, we changed our branding from multicolor to black and white. And, we're binary. You either love us or you hate us. And it's very similar to the way that I played the game. You either love me or you hated me. And we're okay with that. So we're not necessarily for everybody, but that's okay.
But I'm sure you're saying that loosely. It's as black and white is, it can be loose as well.
Yes and no. There's not a lot of gray area with us. You never hear a lot of people. When they comment about me personally, they either like me or they're not like, I don't really know if I have that guy figured out yet or not. It's a 1 or a 0, and it's kind of the same way. It's kind of the same way with our program too. And Bob's a bit of a different story, because if I met somebody on the street that said that they didn't like Bob, I think anybody you asked about my brother, there's not a single person that says he's a bad guy or dislikes him. So,
you just undid everything you said before that.
Well, Bob's different. Bob's a different, again, it's quite binary. It's either yes or no.
No matter how black and white, there's always yin and yang. I mean, that's going to happen. But black and white is, for me, when you say black and white, and what I see it as is something that it's basically a target, right? Sometimes people don't get the black and white, but you can see that they're beginning to understand it. So you're not going to throw them over the side because they don't understand the difference between black and white. But if they do understand the target, right? That's I think from learning, that's what has to happen. Teaching has to leave room for people to gain understanding. That's all I meant by the reward with the challenge is not a reward.
I would agree.
Let's look a little bit back at. We're going to go back to yesteryear, and
Okay, good.
basically, from minor league lacrosse in Calgary, and being recruited by Burnaby, and that's where our story really begins because some of the greatest teams were your juniors in Burnaby.
Yeah, absolutely. I was playing like lacrosse then was still pretty small here, and I had really taken an affinity to it. I loved it. I was playing behind guys like Caleb Toth, and Caleb was he was 5 years ahead of me, or 4 years ahead of me, and was in Burnaby, and I got into that. I was up in Edmonton and ended up running into Jack Crosby, who owned the junior team at the time, and really pushed to come out there and play. And went out when I was 17, in between my 11th and 12th grade year. I went out to Burnaby and played a summer lacrosse there, and then came home. And then the previous year, or the year after that, I was really focused on junior hockey, so I stayed home. And then after that, I went out there for the 3 straight years, and in that 4-year period, it was 3 Minto Cups and a lot of amazing memories about participating in the program with the Lakers. So that's how it all got started. Was following Caleb out to Burnaby.
Right. I want to talk about the one team though. That's the 2002 Burnaby Lakers, because probably the greatest junior team that I can recall. They were just sensational.
I love it that you're saying that. I'll make sure to mention that in our group chat, because we're April 5th or April 4th or April 5th. We're going into the Burnaby Sports Hall of Fame as a new category, as a dynasty, and it comes up a lot that's the greatest team of all time. So I appreciate that we've got some outside validity to that as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. So you finished your time with Burnaby. You move up into Coquitlam, and you have another really great career there. You win the championship in 2007 with Coquitlam. Story program. Talk about moving from junior to senior and the differences that you had to face.
Yeah, I ended up playing a couple of games up with the Adnacs when I was with Burnaby. A couple of call-ups and had some pretty good games playing up at that group. And for me, it was just understanding that I could play at that level. I don't think I ever really thought that professional lacrosse was going to be a thing for me. And being at Denver and running into guys like Bill Adele and guys like that were playing in the NLL and MLL, providing that confidence to kind of move forward. But with Coquitlam, the guys that were on that team, the Colin Doyles and Tracy Galuskis and Dallas Eliaks and the guys that Pat Coyle, the list goes on and on and on of guys that were contributors there. Were also great mentors. Really held you accountable, helped refine the player that you were becoming, and that was all under the efforts of Dr. Don Hedges, who's not with us anymore, and he invested a ton of time and effort and energy into those teams and brought in great guys and was always pushing for Man Cups. And unfortunately that year we lost to Peterborough in Coquitlam when we hosted, but it was an incredible group of guys, and it's just a first class organization with a ton of history and a ton of impact in the community in the Lower Mainland. So I don't regret any time that I played with that team. I had a blast, made a ton of friends, and learned a lot about myself and as a person and a player.
Right. Now we all come to forks in a road in our lives and our careers and things like that. The biggest one that really stands out to me is you were drafted by Paul Del Monte and the Vancouver Ravens in 2001. You turn it down so that you can go to Denver University. And really, that's where you discovered and you becoming a face-off guy and excelled at face-offs, excelled at ground balls and all that. And really, that's the imprint for where your whole career went. Talk about finding that. Yeah.
I screwed Paul over pretty hard because he had drafted me with his first ever pick with Vancouver, and I ended up taking the opportunity to go to Denver. And Paul was amazing about that. It wasn't even a second thought for him. He's a great leader, an amazing mentor. I still keep in touch with Paul today. He's become a big part of my lacrosse journey, and it's just he just cares about people. He's an incredible man and an incredible leader. And it was a tough decision, but it was the right decision. And I had never, that was a big, the ground ball thing was really instilled in us in junior. Like we took a lot of pride pride in being on those ball teams. And it was Mark Miyashita was facing off for us. It was guys like Milan Gaich and Ilya Gaich and Nenad Gaich and Andrew Gwendens and the Nick Farinas and lots of scrappy guys where we just took a lot of pride in going and doing that job. And then arriving at Denver, I wanted to get on the field and I sucked at field lacrosse. So, you can't go onto the field and grab anybody in the NCAA. That's pretty strictly frowned upon. So, really the only way to get onto the field was to find something that nobody else wanted to do. And at that time, there was another guy in Scott Davidson there. And it was just something that I found my kind of calling in a little bit from a specialty perspective. Outside of playing, I was fortunate enough to play on the first and second midfield line and man up my entire collegiate career with Denver. But then also faced off as well, which was a unique component from an athleticism perspective. You don't get a lot of time to recover, and you push your body pretty hard, and it's pretty demanding, physically. The sport, the position has since changed a lot, but I wanted to be a lacrosse player. I hated being called a Fogo; it really pissed me off.
Right.
But it was something that I just kind of found and stuck with, which really helped me moving on.
Right. Talk about a little bit more about Scott Davidson, because you guys competed for positions, but you also had that camaraderie. You guys were like brothers on that team.
Yeah, Scotty was a really good friend of mine. I think part of the position sort of deteriorated that friendship a little bit. Like, it was so competitive, and it was, we were head to head every single day. We're born like a day apart. We couldn't be more similar in a lot of ways. And I think that competition, just consistently in the environment that you're in and the stress that you're in for playing time. Scott played in front of me I didn't really start facing off until consistently until my sophomore year, but I was always kind of playing behind Scott. And then I didn't have the full-time role until my senior year when Scott had graduated. So he was a year ahead of me. But I also went in, you got to remember, I went in at 21 years of age. So I was older than, I was as old as the seniors on the team my freshman year.
Right. So
it was a little bit of a different environment, but yeah, it was, Scott is an absolute competitor, an insane athlete, a great guy. And it was, we got kind of pitted against one another from a competitive standpoint. And I think because we were both so fiercely competitive, it helped make us both better. We hated losing to one another, and in the environment that we were in at Denver, only amplified that competitiveness and brought the best out of both of us.
Right. And you ramped up your career as you went along in Denver. By the end of it, you were named third team All-American, which is quite an achievement. So, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't expect any of that. I had no idea what an All-American was. I had no idea about any of that stuff. Obviously, I was very proud of the accolades, but my first real competitive field lacrosse game was against Duke in the spring of, God, what was it, 2007, 2006. And so I had no idea about the game, and I continued to learn. I was learning all the way into, my international career and professional career. It was it was an awesome transition for me, but it took a long time to get there.
Right. Now, 2007, all of a sudden everything opens for you. You get drafted by Philadelphia in 2006, fourth overall, and you also get drafted in the MLL by the Denver Outlaws for summer. So you keep busy.
It was 10 straight years of playing lacrosse year round, essentially. Multiple leagues. I played with Coquitlam for a while, and then I ended up playing in Peterborough. So the summer was filled with just travel all over the U.S. and Canada, and then the winter was primarily in Philadelphia until winding up in Calgary in 2011.
Right. I actually dug out this one from 2009, the championship year.
That was a good one. We didn't even get to celebrate that championship because Peterborough flew us down to Baltimore, and I was subsequently suspended for the game, but they flew us down thanks to John Grant Jr. And getting him back in the lineup. I flew down with John and Sean Williams, and then they put us on a plane and flew us back to Peterborough for that game. But I sat that one in the stands.
Right. That was quite a team though. That for an introduction to field lacrosse in Toronto, it was a hell of a team. And you had Gary Gates still as a part of that team for most of that season, anyways, and Brody Merrill and a bunch of other guys as well as yourself. And it really was star-studded.
Yeah, it was an exceptional team. It was at the Dave Huntley and Stu Brown put that together, and a big part of that was putting that group together leading up to the 2010 World Championships.
Right.
So all of the guys on that team were outstanding players. We had a great group, and that was the year that they evacuated, or was that the year? Yeah, they evacuated Annapolis because of the hurricane that came through. Hurricane Irene came through, and we played that in an empty stadium. So it was it was a lot of fun. The guys on that team were exceptional, and it was definitely a different style and brand of field lacrosse that we played, which was super fun and definitely excited to be a part of.
Absolutely. Now, one of the questions I like to ask is, when you were drafted by Philadelphia, went into your first training camp, was it what you expected?
Well, I didn't attend training camp. I held out,
Oh.
so I didn't experience a training camp. Actually, I held out that year. It pissed a lot of people off. I remember my first game. I roomed with Ian Lord, who's still in the league. That guy's made quite the career out of playing. I think he wakes up to a half naked me running around trying to figure everything out. I don't have any of my gear, and we went in and ended up losing to Edmonton. On oh, sorry, I got a dog barking. Ended up losing to Edmonton that game, but yeah, I don't remember the training camp because I was holding out for more money.
But you did hit the ground running when you did start playing with them, because in that first month you were rookie of the month. 13 points, 53 loose balls, 53 of 79 on the faceoff dot. That's hitting the ground running, I'd say.
I played for so long in the WLA prior to arriving at the NLL. Like, I was playing with these guys pretty consistently, so it wasn't like I was coming out of Denver as like a true freshman and as a true senior and then rolling into the NLL. Like, I had been playing against the majority of these guys at that time, so went in there with a ton of confidence, and I was just trying to make a mark, and trying to get into a position where I was playing in that league full time, and I didn't want to look back.
Well, yeah, you and your brother both made a mark, especially in Philadelphia. Your style of play was perfect for that city, and the fan base just gravitated. Talk about the fan base and you personally, because that style of play just was right into their alley.
Yeah, I remember talking to Andrew Gwynn about it because he was in Philadelphia at the time, and he's like, "Man, you got to go to Philadelphia; they'll love you there." And I had an amazing time. The city is, they gravitate to my style of play. We were there. My last game that I played there, I remember there was still lots of Snyder jerseys in the stands, and which was awesome. And then I ended up watching a guy. We ended up winning, and I played a pretty great game, and we were all over the fans and just having fun in Calgary. I remember a guy ripping his jersey off, pouring his beer on it, and kicking it down the stairs and walking out of the stadium. And that's very on brand for Philadelphia. So, it was it was an awesome place to play. The fans there are insane. They really gravitate to that style of play. And I had a blast when I was there. The organization was first class. They treated us really well. Made it really comfortable, and having the playing under guys like Lindsay Sanderson and Dave Huntley and Chris Sanderson and those guys are all just passionate about the sport and really got the best out of the groups that we had there.
Right. I'll let you know something. Every time I'm there, I see Snyder jersey still. So
well, that's great.
It's amazing how people fulfill their reputation, huh?
Yeah, well, I was primed for it.
Now, a question outside of team to team. You made a lot of All-Star games, and you had a lot of success in All-Star games. In fact, I have the 2008 All-Star jerseys, Grant's jersey, above my head. But should the league go back to having All-Star games? I personally have been on my soapbox saying yes, especially with ESPN and TSN. What a great way to showcase all the talent that the league has. What do you think?
I think the Four Nations is probably the way to look at that. Just recently, the All-Star games are, and I think you get that out of the guys that play in those. I just never really had an off switch. So I just played the game the way that I played the game. And it's really hard. Like, when you are facing off and playing and just playing lacrosse in general, there's really nowhere to, like, you can get fancy and you can do fun stuff. And I know that, like, some guys, take it serious, and others. I was just one of those guys who was just always competing. So, Again, some guys loved it, some guys hated it. There wasn't a lot of mixed feelings about it. Yeah, you look at I think you look at the success of the Four Nations component, and you look at the league primarily being American and Canadian. I don't know why you wouldn't look at take lessons from what that experience was and showcase that. I think that would probably be something that I imagine the league would look at doing. Again, the problem is that the sport is just so rough. It's not 84 games. It's it's quite smaller, less than a quarter of that. And I just think you would get a lot out of the guys to go and compete and play in that. And maybe it's a little bit of a financial uptick to go participate in that game. I think you'd get the best out of the guys that were playing in the world on that stage, and it would be certainly positive for the international game as well. If they ran a Canada-US kind of component of that, and with the names coming into the league, Tommy Schreiber and the other guys that are following in his footsteps from the American component, like that game is only getting more traction in the US, and I think you could really put together a cool opportunity, to showcase the American Canadian kind of rivalry within the sport at that level.
Right. I don't think you're far off with the Four Nations thing. I spend a lot of time going to Prague with the Gales and doing the Rubeski tournament. And the thing I noticed is that European lacrosse is getting faster and faster and better each time I'm out there. So they're slowly catching up. It kind of is like 30 years ago in hockey, when Europe was starting to pick up on North America. So that Four Nations thing isn't too far off, I don't think, if they want to pursue it.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of leagues kind of following suit with that. It's tough, in the NBA but like that product that was on the ice for the Four Nations component was I was like, this is either going to make hockey really popular or it's going to ruin the NHL, because you're going to have to go back and watch Columbus play Minnesota on a Thursday, and it's not that, right? And
you can talk about an Alberta team that's not doing well since then.
Well, Calgary's doing all right. They're hanging in there.
I meant Edmonton, the other Alberta.
Edmonton. Yeah, I didn't even know there was another Alberta team.
I was afraid of that. Yeah, they haven't won a game since the Four Nations.
Yeah, that's true. And they've been blown out pretty hard, actually.
Yeah, they've had a tough time. But lacrosse, I think, lends itself to the international game. I think it's because it's so nuanced. It's surprise factor. Since we started doing this show, since I've been doing lacrosse shows going back to the 80s, I've noticed that more and more it seems to always be the same story, where most people who watch lacrosse for the first time, it's shock and awe, and that shock and awe attracts them really well. And I think that's the hook that it has in Europe and in other places, and it's good to foster that.
Yeah, I agree. It's niche as well, right? It's something that is, it's a little bit foreign. It's got a lot of skill and athleticism that's correlated to it. You need to have sort of generational components of the game, for it to be passed down and continue to be played. It's not we don't make a lot of money. It doesn't have that kind of sex appeal to it, but it's also it's a fantastic community sport, and that needs to continue to be maintained. But in the same breath, we also getting the the community on board from a viewership perspective. More people going and taking in games, focusing more on the product itself, and the experience of watching good lacrosse. I think is really saleable. So there's still lots of work to do, but it's awesome when I'm going to South Korea this summer with the U20 team with Canada, and every time you go, it's evolved a little bit more and a little bit more, and so it's trending in the right direction. It doesn't seem to be coming backwards, and that helps when you have big investment in guys like Josai and what Paul's doing with the PLL, and it's just starting to get more traction and more professionalism that I think is contributing to the to the growth of the game.
And the uniqueness of it is the physicality that the world isn't accustomed to in its sports.
Yeah, it's a lot different. Like I went and watched an AFL rugby game like a rugby union. Was it rugby league? It was rugby league, and it was the Origins. It was New South Wales and Queensland and the tournament was held in New South Wales, and there was 80,000 people there, and I was shocked at how like rough and violent rugby is. But yeah, like lacrosse can, we make it look a lot worse than it is, in terms of, it can be pretty dramatic with the stick swinging and the body but it's just such a technical game, and it's a game that, I think, stemming back to how I got started, it's a game that you can control the ball a little bit more and utilize your athleticism, but it still has that, those intangibles that hockey and different racket and stick sports have. So just the control and the finesse and the accuracy, and I think once we get more people understanding the game and playing the game, you understand how hard it is and how challenging it is to play that way, and that obviously contributes to the allure of participation in the sport and viewership.
Right. Now, you had a lot of success playing for Canada for field and for box, and winning a lot of championships and second or whatever. But now it's going to go into the Olympics in 2028, and your thoughts on sixes?
Yeah, I think just from an inclusionary perspective, you look at the amount of field space that's available in Canada versus the US or in some of these other countries. It's pretty challenging to get into, when you look at the amount of nations that are playing the game. Like, I can't imagine what field time costs in Tokyo. And I can't imagine there's a lot of available, places to participate. But it's one of those games where I think it condensing the field, condensing the roster sizes, at the end of the day, it's really economics that play into both participation in the sport and the execution at an Olympic level. So having the numbers down, having the pace of the game, I don't think you would get somebody watching an 80-minute lacrosse game at an international level on an Olympic stage. It'd be pretty challenging to do, right? So just blending the hybrid component of what the field game and the box game is allows for more teams to be competitive. You don't have the ball control of the US and Canada. You don't have, not all the Americans are arguably, some of the most athletic, athletes in the sport, in terms of their athleticism. And that trickle down effect is there's a lot of disparity between the other nations in that regard when you combine, ball control, skill level, athleticism, all of that stuff. So I think the condensed format of the game, the structure of the game, the fact that it is really a blend of box and field lacrosse, I think it lends itself well to more of a global participation and ultimately, to be able to watch and execute at an Olympic stadium, right? You can play multiple games in a venue versus one. And competing at the same time, really, if you wanted to, from the execution of that in a confined area. So I think it's going to be great for the sport. For as Canadians, I think it's a little different because we play that style of lacrosse year round. Where our box lacrosse acumen, lends itself very well to the field lacrosse side of the game. I think it's a lot more challenging to be a field lacrosse player and then pick up box lacrosse late than it is to be a box lacrosse player and pick up field lacrosse late. So I think it's going to be a great spectacle. It's going to be a great show, and it certainly allows for more people to participate at that level. And I think it somewhat levels the playing field a little bit more.
Right. Is there anything that you think that they should tinker with?
Yeah, I think it would be great to have the ball in play, like being rewarded or being penalized for shooting. Like, you want lots of goals. Like, I think it's keeps the ball in control. But it was an idea that I think Steve Govett and Dave Huntley had a while back, was to have, some sort of apparatus behind the goal to keep the ball in play, whether it brought the ball back into the field. I think it creates more transition. That would be the only thing. I don't know how you would necessarily execute that. That's above my pay grade. I'm not gonna, I'll piggyback on their idea. I think keeping the ball in play and creating more broken situations is obviously really exciting. But the space in the game and the technical component of the game, when you're playing on a condensed field and you got guys that can shoot the ball very hard from 15 yards, if you're ripping shots all the time and you're getting the ball back, it's gonna be a pretty lopsided game. So I think right now, like where it is, it's pretty great. And as a faceoff guy, like, I understand pulling the ball out of the net too. So removes that position from the game, but I think it really focuses on the skill and the athleticism of the guys. And I think it'll be cool to get the goalies more involved, and the way that they're managing benches. The game looks pretty good to me right now. So to be determined.
You just blew my mind. You literally just blew my mind, Jeff.
Why is that?
All of a sudden, I had this image of a wall behind the net of maybe 12, maybe 15 feet wide, and maybe 8-10 feet high, and then have guys like you using that wall as a play to score, like an intention.
I don't know. Maybe a John Grant. Maybe a John Grant, but not of me. I wouldn't be on the offensive end of the field.
You do get what I'm saying, right? You do get what I'm saying.
I do. I think I think the vision that I certainly don't want to take credit for the idea because it wasn't mine, but I think what Steve and Gary Steve and Dave Hundley had chatted about was something that kicked the ball back in. Like if it had, you had a big rebounder back there and it brought the ball back into play, that would be an interesting twist on the sport for sure.
It would be a great twist because that's what's missing in outdoor lacrosse is continuity.
Yeah, the ball just exits the field and that's that. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about box lacrosse is, in any NLL game, I think you can really tell on the deciding factors is usually in transition opportunities. Everybody has essentially the same amount of offensive opportunities, defensive stances. Usually, unless I'm on your team, the penalties are usually really balanced. You have your power play opportunities and man down opportunities, and really deciding factor is the transition component of the game, which is really exciting. That's the biggest part of box lacrosse I loved was running transition. So, being able to create more of that in the sixes game would be something that would be, if you asked me to change anything, I would try to focus a little bit more on that.
And it would create more sustained pressure, which I think is what's exciting in lacrosse. Even though in box lacrosse, even though it gets a little bit too much like basketball when the players are walking around trying to figure out what they're going to do, it would be great to just keep that alive. I like that idea. Tell them that you met somebody who's watched lacrosse for a while, not a player, but a watcher who thinks that it would be fun to watch, something like that. It really would. It's so different. It's such a great idea. I really like it. My head just blew up the top of my head.
Well, I think for the layman watching the sport for the first time, I think the broken situations are really what is exciting about the sport. For the people that have a deep lacrosse acumen, you can pay attention to offenses and defenses, and maybe I'm a little biased because I wasn't the greatest offensive player. I was good one-on-one or one-on-one with a goalie. But managing offenses and defenses and the nuances that are embedded in that are, having a deeper acumen for the sport lends itself well to understanding that stuff more. Trying to create more broken situations and less or more opportunity in open field and odd man situations is exciting in the sport for sure, especially late in games and late in quarters, all of that stuff.
But it might cause them to shrink the net.
Yeah, I don't know. I shrink the net.
They did something like that, they'd have to shrink the net because I'm sure the net would get filled with balls.
It would, yeah, it would for sure. But it's I think they've done a good job of blending the two disciplines, and I'm really excited to see what this product looks like on the Olympic stage.
Right. Let's fast forward to the current NLL. And what are your thoughts on the way it's moved forward from when you've played to where we are now?
I think the biggest thing is it seems like it's gotten a little softer. It's not as it's not as rough as it's been, as rough as I remember. I've been pretty disconnected from it. I played for so long and so regularly that I started focusing on golf and skiing on my last little bit. So I watch games and I tune in and the guys are massive. They're big. The skill level is really high. The athleticism has definitely increased. The visibility of the sport, I think, is fantastic. It's I think the league's doing a really good job in terms of getting it out there more. The product has definitely changed. Like there's just more kids that are training more, and now with the influence of the Americans coming more into the league is really powerful as well. It's really driving the athleticism of the game forward. And so I don't necessarily know if the roughness component is something that, is good or bad. That's the one takeaway I think I've noticed. It's just not as physical as we've seen. Not a lot of, massive hits or scraps or any of the stuff that's kind of around that, in that part of the, the components of the sport. But the guys have certainly, the talent level is out of this world, and watching what those guys do with the ball and with their bodies is pretty exceptional. So I think that's a big part of where the sport is going, is just understanding the athleticism that's incorporated to it, and less about guys, going out there and being bullies, but more about them being actual athletes.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with guys like you, you, Shatler, The Hill, Crowley, Pace, all these programs, Fort Union down in the States. I think with all the year-round training and specificity of all these things and all your knowledge and all your passions coming to it, these kids train year-round. They have the greatest coaches going. And of course, as they move up, they have the passion instilled. They already have the talent. And now everything comes to fruition as they move forward.
Yeah, the NCAA has changed. Like, the level of just compete at an NCAA level is spectacular. Like, I watch Denver play now, and I'm like, I wouldn't have made this team. Like, these guys are like, the game has really changed in terms of the competitiveness, and that's fueled by, yes, it's guys that are here working and fortunate enough to be working in the sport. And we're very grateful for that opportunity. I know all those guys that you mentioned, all passionate guys, all awesome people that are, finding their way to be able to contribute. And if they weren't doing that, they'd be doing other things. They're just that high level of individual. And so for them to make a business out of it and be able to make a living, contributing to the sport is huge. And I know that, none of those guys take that for granted at all. I think we all feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to participate in that level. But I don't think there'd be enough Canadians in the NCAA had there not been something like that.
Right.
The sport is advancing so quickly, and it's just purely on the athletes that are participating. You're starting to see kids make lacrosse a priority over hockey in Canada, right? And you're starting to see players in the US make lacrosse a priority over football. Or you look at, like, the guys that are transitioning, playing in NCAA rosters and suiting up and playing football for Notre Dame in the fall, and then playing lacrosse in the summer, in the spring, right? Like, the level of athlete that's participating at this level now is exceptional. And I think that's behind what we're doing here, is that we've got to do something to keep up, or we're going to, just because you're Canadian doesn't mean you're entitled to an NCAA roster spot. So, you gotta get better, and you gotta work harder. And that's kind of what that's all leaning on.
Right. One of the guys in the NLL that just, to me, exemplifies you is Jake Withers. Great at face-offs.
That's awesome.
He has a mean streak to him, but is also dead focused on what he wants to do, and is a really great guy off the floor. But his style of play always puts me back to watching you, 2009, 2010, around that area.
Well, I'm flattered by that. I don't know if Jake would be, but no, he's awesome. Jake's a fantastic guy. I've had the pleasure of playing with him in 2018 in Israel, and working with him a little bit after that. And yeah, he's an awesome player. I think that's a big thing. Like, the position in the NLL that you're starting to see a lot of guys, a lot of teams take, face-off specific players. And when the rosters are so small, you have to be able to contribute on multiple ends of the floor in the situations that you find yourself caught in. So, I always wanted to play. Facing off was just a reason for me to go on the floor and get the ball. And, I tried to fast break every face-off I was ever on, unless they were, going 4 back or whatever guys were doing, in terms of just, that was always the goal, to make teams do that. So, face-off wins for me were probably a little bit more selfish, in the sense that I wanted to win a face-off. I wanted to collect a loose ball, and I wanted an opportunity to make a play on the net. And, that, I think the guys that are coming into the league, the face-off guys that are entering that position, they have to be, first-class athletes, because you can't be a liability on the floor otherwise. And Jake is certainly at the pinnacle of that right now in the league. And Trevor Baptiste is insanely talented as well. And, those guys would sort of be the benchmark for what that position entails in the NLL.
Yeah, I don't think there really is a FOGO anymore, because T.D. Erlin's learn the defensive role, and learn transition as well. All these guys that are they're top elite faceoff guys have learned the position more so.
Yeah. Justin Anasio is doing a great job. Staff with Vancouver, like you can't be a liability on the floor at all. And I think that's the real difference maker between, collegiate lacrosse or field lacrosse is you've got that very specific role. And historically, those guys haven't been necessarily talented with the ball or offensively or defensively. So breaking into the league, you got to be a pretty special athlete. And, I think that, Trevor and Jake and Justin and Staff and Nassau and all these guys they're all insanely good athletes.
Right.
So definitely contributors on their team for sure.
Right. With all this publicity and everything, do you think full time is on the horizon?
Yeah, I think being able to have the guys that want to play I know the PLL is a bit of a different animal, but having guys being able to play both is obviously super beneficial. I think that's how it was full time for me was the NLL and the MLL. And yeah, I think that really falls on the fans. Like I don't know I'm not privy to the financial success or lack thereof in the league. But that obviously stems on sponsorship and viewership and getting more people to tune in and go to stadiums. So I think that there's a big responsibility on the player component of representing the sport really well and treating it like a pro game. And then in turn, working with the league to make sure that the league is financially healthy and it survives and one's not getting too far ahead of the other. They got to grow together.
Right. Now, you had the benefit of having an awful lot of really great coaches. It's rubbed off on you and how you're coaching the U19s, the younger kids. Do you ever have any aspirations of going into the NLL and coaching?
Yeah, it's there. I needed some time away, and I've taken a pretty significant hiatus. I love working with the Canadian national team program. It's near and dear to my heart, and certainly volunteer positions, but that program means the world to me. And we, when you have guys like Chris Anderson, taking time off of chemotherapy and playing games with brain cancer, and Chris or Kyle Miller, battling osteogenic sarcoma and then playing for us and spending his time educating people about the national team program and what guys like Dave Huntley did for the program. Remembering those guys and keeping that legacy alive with that team is a massive priority for me. I think it's really hard to every time that you see a Canadian national team win at an international level. You see a massive influx of players coming out of Canada into the NCAA and being a part of those teams. So I really think that is crucial to be a part of and maintain. And so I've got nothing but time for, the U20 program and the men's program because it did so much for me in my career and my identity and just my, the things that I value in terms of being a part of this sport. So being a part of the NLL, yeah, like I have aspirations of being a head coach someday. Not right now, but certainly would get involved on a player development level or a competitive level, like a compete development level with some of these programs. And I'm just if the right opportunity presented itself, it's be something I'd certainly explore. Right. But it's fun coaching the high level stuff. We work so heavily in it year round all the time that being a part of the guys where it's more about maintaining culture and presence and competitiveness and not focusing as much on the skill development is exciting and appealing. So I'd look at any opportunity that presented itself to be a part of an NLL team.
Right. Now you've had a storied career. You won on every level. Is there a favorite memory? It doesn't have to be NLL or any of that. But is there any favorite memory that comes to mind just like this of your lacrosse playing?
Yeah, I think we lost in 2010. Chris was sick, and we ended up losing that one. We should have won that event, and we ended up a couple of misplays, and it goes the other way, and that was really hard. I think when we celebrated in 2014, I just remember going to Dave Huntley and I had just you get emotional thinking about it. Just a moment, he and I, and just because of how hard it was to lose Chris in between 2010 and 14, and what that team went and did, in Denver. And I think that, that's the first real memory that comes to mind for me. And I think the other one was, trying to sell Burnaby on getting into that program there, and throwing the ball in the rain with a kid so that Jack Crosby could see that I could pass and catch. And it was less about me being able to do that. I think more about me being really keen on going to Burnaby. And so those are really important moments. But there's so many amazing memories. I think there's being down 5-3 in the first quarter, and the fans in Philadelphia chanting "Fire Huntley" was and us laughing hysterically on the bench. There's a million of them. The lacrosse community is so unique like that. The guys, yes, it's a serious sport, but there's so many interesting stories and personalities and walks of life in the NLL. The guys they're all incredible, and you end up having relationships with guys after the fact that you locked horns with early on in your career. So there's lots of great stories.
Right. Aren't you glad that the finals went to best 2 out of 3 instead of a 10-minute mini game?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, it's good that they're doing that. It gives the opportunity for the actual best team to come out of there, not necessarily the one that's performing that night. But there's nothing like a 7-game Minto Cup or a 7-game Man Cup. A 7-game series in lacrosse is a pretty unique thing in the world. It's a lot different than hockey, and it's you're battling all sorts of stuff, and I'd love to see it 7 games, because that'd be interesting. I just don't think we don't have the time to span that out.
Yeah. As long as we keep it just weekends, we won't never have the time for that.
Exactly.
But if it becomes full time and it has weekday games, maybe, right?
Exactly.
So I just really want to.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No.
Jeff. I was going
to. All right, you guys want me to join in too?
Yeah, please. Go ahead. I'm done. I talk too much. It's all yours.
I was just thanking you for your time. I really appreciate everything that you're doing and you've done. It was a privilege watching you over the years.
Well, thank you.
In Philadelphia, in Toronto, in Denver, in Calgary, it really was great watching you, because the game is made up of character and characters, and you happen to have both. Characters and being a character. So it really was wonderful, and it's a real privilege to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys letting me ramble. Certainly miss competing. I'm on to the later years of life, and certainly enjoy, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to continue to work in the sport, and hopefully make a little bit of a dent in its growth. And I love every minute of doing it, and very grateful for the opportunity. So thanks so much for letting me come on and rap with you guys.
Well, Jeff, we appreciate your view on the game. As Gary said, we appreciate your career. I won't lay it on as thick. I'll just say that you're fun watching you play. And most of all, I think the most important thing is that you're basically contributing to the game beyond your playing days, which is something that, and I don't mean as this as demeaning what you do, but it seems to be a common thread with a lot of players. Former players just love to keep contributing to the game. And thank you for being one of those players.
I appreciate it. I think it's everybody collectively, like whether you're employed in the sport or you played it or you're passionate about it. That's the one really unique thing about lacrosse that has allowed it to grow and flourish the way that it has, is there's so many amazing volunteers and participants and organizations, and at the core of all of those, good and bad, it's people that are passionate about the sport. And I think that's just really unique to the lacrosse community in general. You don't see a lot of people move on from lacrosse. It's kind of with them forever. And it's a special thing, and it's not consistent in sport anywhere else. I think it's something that you really see drilled into lacrosse people and personalities and people that have been a part of the game for whatever length of time. Everybody's very passionate about it. So I think that goes out to everybody who's involved in the sport collectively.
Yep, and thank you for elevating this game. Of course, Gary Groob and the elevator himself, founder of Elev8 Lacrosse. I'm Candid Frank. Thank you for watching NLL Lacrosse Talk, as we usually do every Thursday at 4 o'clock. Find the excitement of picking up a stick. Trust me, it'll never go away. Thanks for watching, everybody.